Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us at our webinar, Innovation for Responsible Supply Chains. We're very happy to see you here. Thank you also to those who greeted us in the chat. It's very nice to get to know where you're coming from, what is the weather like, and what is your field of expertise. Very, very nice. I think we can start now. And I will start with introducing myself, as I did also in the chat. My name is Svetlana Ivanova. I'm research associate at the Institute for Management Sustainability at Wirtschaftsuniversität, University in Vienna of Business and Economics. And mainly I work in the field of responsible innovation. And I will be moderating the event today. So we'll go through rules for today, few technical things. So you already have learned, and I think probably most already know how to use chat function here. So we will use this chat function also during the event, and you can write your questions addressing the speakers during their presentations, and later we will summarize and address these questions in our discussion. Since we are a lot, already 71 participants, we ask you to mute yourself during the presentations of speakers, and we will let you to speak during the discussion. So to avoid background noise for now, please mute yourself, and then later in the discussion we'll bring you in. And when in the discussion we talk with our speakers, with our experts, it would be nice if you switch on your camera so that we see you, and it's nice for us also to have a feeling to talking with you. Unless you would not like to switch on your camera, you can also consider following us on YouTube, and I think we can share, Angelo, maybe you can share the link in our chat box to continue listening to us on YouTube. And also the recording will be saved later on the Resourcing Project YouTube channel, so you can later also watch it. Thank you very much, Mariana, for sharing the link. It is now in the chat. So our agenda for today is welcome and introduction in a couple of words, and then 3 keynote presentation. The first one on finance as a driver for sustainability. The second one is bringing circular economy and discussing innovation for responsible supply chains in this angle. And the third one, the business case behind supply chain responsibility. How does it pay off? After that, we will have a discussion, and we will summarize, as I said, your questions in the chat. So please go ahead and write your questions also during the presentations. We will come back to them in the discussion and let you to jump into it. Thank you. And let me introduce coordinator of Resourcing Project, founder and head of the Institute for Management Sustainability, Andre Martinuzzi. Hello, Andre.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure to welcome you to this webinar. It's a quite impressive group of people. I read Johannesburg, hello to the very south, Barcelona, I think it's hotter in Vienna today, Sofia, also quite far away, and Ghana. So these were the ones that I read, but I think you're from even more countries, Germany, Austria, Europe, all across Europe, Netherlands, Belgium, I read. Thanks for joining today. This is a webinar on very innovative cases for responsible sourcing. We thought we discussed in the Resourcing Project for quite some long time very hands-on things. The Resourcing Project started more than 3 years ago. It's a Horizon Europe project funded by the Commission. Horizon Europe is Europe's biggest research and innovation program, and it aims at establishing a multi-stakeholder platform to advance responsible sourcing of raw materials. And it's all about global mineral value chains. At the same time, we have the impression that all of this supply chain responsibility now got a lot more attention during the last year. So 3 years ago, when we started this project, it was interesting for people in the raw material sector. Now, supply chain responsibility is important for every company. And this is why we said we today would like to have a broader view also on things that are not so common in supply chain management. For example, financial instruments. This will be one of our presentations. I'm very happy that Sabine Schelander from GREINER joined us today. In the Resourcing Project, we dealt with 3 different sectors: the ICT sector, the mobility sector, and the renewable energy sector, all sectors where we think that digitalization and sustainability might help us to overcome global challenges, as for example, climate change. So we try to digitalize and to decarbonize our economy. At the same time, this leads us to an increased demand of raw materials. And in the resourcing project, we dealt with these challenges and how we could promote an agenda and a coherent application set for practices, actually leading to roadmaps. We created 3 roadmaps. These 3 roadmaps are already published on the website, and they deal with these 3 sectors: the renewable energy sector, mobility sector, and electrical and electronics equipment sector. However, it might be important for you if you're not working in these sectors or in these supply chains as well. What you can do as a company when you want to engage more in responsible sourcing, actually you can pool resources, your physical, your intellectual resources. You can adapt the purchasing practices and invest in suppliers. We will hear more today, also from Mariana Lukic from my team, how companies make a success story out of supply chain responsibility. Many companies perceive this as oh gosh, we must do this. We don't want to do this, but we have to because there are a hell of regulations out there. There are other companies making a success factor out of it, strategic success factor. 2 of these companies are here today, Schoeller-Bleckmann and GREINER. Schoeller-Bleckmann, steel industry, GREINER, packaging and plastic industry. But we have more cases. We've analyzed more cases, and Mariana will give you some insights on this today. The resourcing world maps are already published. They will be in conference physical, face-to-face. Yes, not just looking into Zoom. You can meet people in real life in September in Vienna, and Mariana will tell you later on a little bit more about this conference. So in my role as a coordinator, thanks for joining. It's a pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to very interesting debates. Thank you. Up to you, Svetlana.
Thank you very much, Andre. And I only can join to this thank you words to everyone who joined. It's impressive, the expertise of people who join us today, and yeah, all the countries you're coming from. And already there are a few questions I can see, and one is about the recording, if it will be publicly available later. Yes, it will be on YouTube channel of the Resourcing Project and in the main platform of Resourcing Project. And we have already shared the link. If you scroll back to the chart, to the YouTube where it will be streaming now, and then will be saved as a recording. And let me introduce our high-level keynote speaker today. We are very lucky to have Sabine Schoeller, co-head of sustainability at GREINER AG, an expert in sustainability management, Andreas Bocker, Group General Counsel, Sustainability Strategy Lead at Schoeller-Bleckmann, and Mariana Kovacic-Lukic, Research Associate at the Institute for Management Sustainability at VU Vienna. Very happy to and glad to have these high-level experts. And I will introduce now, we'll start with Sabine and her presentation. So Sabine Schoeller is a hello, Sabine.
Hi everybody.
Yes, as I said, Sabine is a co-head of sustainability at GREINER AG. It's a plastic industry, one of the leading companies, an expert with more than 20 years of expertise in sustainability management. And today, Sabine will dive us in to define us as a driver for sustainability, addressing the questions about how does a green loan work, what are the internal and external effects of the loan, and how to consider responsible sourcing in a green loan. Hello again, Sabine.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Hi, everybody from Ghana to Austria to Vorarlberg, Timisoara I've seen. So, wow, that's quite nice. Hi, everybody. I also...
Yes, if you would like to, you can share your screen, Sabine.
Yes, we'll do
and
that.
The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So, I think that should already work.
Yes, it's perfect.
Good. I would like to get rid of this here, but probably not.
It works perfectly. We can see the slides.
Perfect.
It was fine.
Good. So, hi everybody again. My name is Sabine Schoeller. I'm co-head of sustainability at GREINER AG, meaning that I'm leading there the sustainability department for the whole group. I will give you some insights on who GREINER is and what we do, because I think this is important. If you start talking about sustainability topics, you also need to think of who is the company, or in which sector is the company working in, what is the business model, what are probably the products or services we provide, because then that definitely makes a difference on the different sustainability issues, but also in regards on supply chain matters. So let's right away dive into the topic. As I mentioned, I will give you a short overview. The cool thing about GREINER, and I always highlight that because in my opinion and in my perspective and also perception, it's really cool that GREINER is a 100% family-owned business, meaning that 100% of the business belongs to a family. There are no external shareholders or similar stakeholders, but at the same time, family-owned doesn't mean it's steered by the family. We very well have an external executive board out of 3 very handsome men here, which you can see on the screen. We have Hannes Moser, who is our CFO, and Axel Kühner, who is CEO, and Manfred Stanek, who is our COO. And they are steering, guiding, operating the company on behalf of the family. I right away turn to our products because I think most of you have probably already came into contact with one of our products, which is not very hard to do because we're mainly a producer. So we have 3 divisions, as you can see here on the slides. We are a producer of packaging solutions, mainly in the food sector. So probably you have had your whole yogurt out of one of our cups so far, or you even slept on one of our mattresses. So we are a provider, manufacturer of foam solutions, producing mattresses, but also seats for airplanes or other stuff when it comes to the automobility sector. And the last division, last but not least, the 3rd division is our medical division, where we are producing all kind of equipment for laborers, but also for other medical applications. So we basically are a plastics and foam producer, which can also give you some insights already on our supply chains, meaning that we are basically purchasing granulates, chemicals, and also oils for the foam production. GREINER itself has about 11,600 employees worldwide. We operate in 34 countries, and our turnover was by 2.3 billion euros last year, so in 2022. So we are a big company, not too big, but even not too small. But however, operating in 34 countries and also having employees all over the world is a challenge, and it's also a challenge when it comes to supply chains. Good, let's turn to the topic of sustainability, and then later on turn into the supply chain topic. First of all, just to give you some insights, and I think you're all familiar with that, believe it or not, climate change is here. Right now, we are all happy that it's warm outside because it was quite cool and rainy in Vienna the last couple of weeks or days. But there are other areas where they really suffered already this year from long drought periods and less rainfalls, and we are all affected by extreme weather events. So as I said, believe it or not, climate change is here. And at the same time, we're also facing major social challenges, meaning that we have to deal with increasing poverty, social injustice, but also demographic change, which we can probably all feel also related to our working fields. And to cover also the G aspect in this presentation, at the same time, and this is probably mainly also applicable for Europe, we are facing lots of upcoming regulations and directives. There are so many new laws out there. There's so many drafts published. And by now, I think every sustainability manager can read legal texts from day to noon. From morning to noon, because there are so many new things going on. And this is great from a sustainability perspective, but in terms from business perspective, that really puts a lot of pressure on it. It makes it really complex, and it's really about creating transparency for all of our stakeholders. And all these different effects, like the E, the S, and the G effect, mean by now that sustainability itself has an impact on each and every area in our business. So it's not only related to the sustainability department anymore. We have to also get procurement on board. We have to deal with finance when it comes to, which is also my topic for today, finance tools, finance requirements in terms of financial sector. But also we have to deal with the HR department and all the other areas in the company. So that sounds a bit complex, I think, in the beginning. So we have all these like environmental challenges, social challenges, but also the challenges in terms of governance, steering, how to set up our governance, how to comply with all these different regulations. And the question is really like, how should that work? Okay. I don't want to give you too much insights or provide you too much content in terms of what we do as GREINER in terms of sustainability, but just so that you know, we have a sustainability strategy in place, which is called the Blue Plan. It contains 3 major pillars, which is also more or less addressing the ESG part. As we are plastic and foam producer, we mainly focus obviously on fight climate change, but also on creating a circular business, because this is very important for us as working in the plastics or in chemical industry. And obviously we also want to focus on our people and empower our people, because we need the right people to be able to drive innovation, but also to work on circularity or decarbonization. So these are our main 3 pillars of our Blue Plan sustainability strategy. So enough about GREINER and our strategy. Let's dive into today's topic. So what I want to present you briefly is what we did in October 2020. So October last year, we signed our first promissory note loan, which is an ESG-based green loan covering 172 million euros. And by that time, that was the first financial incentive which we signed related to ESG targets on group level. Which on one hand side creates transparency for our stakeholders, meaning that we really commit ourselves to achieve these targets, that we have to set ourselves ambitious targets, because none of the financial institutes would go for, or not even the financial market would go for nice to have targets. They're really striving, really challenging you as a company to set clear targets and to be able to really also push yourself to achieve them and to make a difference. Let's call it like this. These targets have to be audited annually. So we have an annual target achievement plan behind these targets. So the financial institutes check every year if we manage to achieve the target set, and that has to be verified by an external party. And if we manage to do so, or if not, then that has an effect on the interest rate of this green loan, which can be a positive effect or a negative effect depending on our ambitions and our effort we put in there. There are 3 criteria behind this ESG-based green loan. One is in the area of environment, meaning that we set ourselves the target that until 2030 we want to have 100% renewable electricity in place. We want to, in the S sector, have 40 women in leadership. 40% of women in leadership. It's not 40 women, it's 40% in women. And when we talk about supply chain, and this is the topic of today, we set ourselves the target to have to only work, or to mainly work, 99% of our strategic suppliers have to have an EcoVadis rating and with at least 50 points each of these suppliers. These are the 3 targets which are related to the green loan. And to give you some more insight what that means, because I think it always sounds quite easy. Okay, we signed the green loan and we have targets in place, and then we go and start working on them. And even probably most of you are supply chain experts. You all know that supply chains can be very complex. It can be tough to really move something there, to change something. So we also do that for years now. We are continuously trying to increase awareness and transparency for sustainability throughout our suppliers and supplier network. Of course, we've done our homework also. So we have a supplier code of conduct in place. We also have a sustainable sourcing policy in place, meaning that our buyers really have to think of how and what to purchase. And obviously, we are also striving for a constant exchange with our suppliers, because I don't know, probably you're familiar with that, but having policies and code of conduct in place is nice, it's great, and it's mandatory. But on the other hand side, you have to really engage with your suppliers to be able to make a change. On the other side, we all know, or we are familiar with the fact that our due diligence obligations will increase in the future. There are lots of laws coming up, like the CSDDD or the current German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act. I think this is how it's called in English, which is what was published, I think, last year in Germany, and also has a trickle-down effect on our suppliers that are on other companies, not only located in Germany or Europe. And to fulfill all these duties, obviously your buyers have to be trained to be able to best support your suppliers with their expertise and to push your topics. In terms of our green loan target, that for us, that means that we are talking about more than 600 suppliers, which would be our strategic suppliers, which are in scope for this green loan. And as mentioned before, we have an annual target achievement plan, which we need to stick to, which will be audited annually from an external provider. And talking about our suppliers, that means we really have to approach them. We have to tell them, what is EcoVadis? Why do we use that? Why is it so important for us to get our suppliers assessed, to really work with them? And then when you managed to get them assessed, it's about really a constant interchange with them to constantly push and improve their performance. Of course, we want to have a higher rate than for 50% in terms of EcoVadis. So each supplier has to achieve at least 50 points in the rating. So that means lots of work, lots of talking, lots of emails, lots of trainings, lots of exchange internally, but also externally. What would be, what are the benefits or effects internally and externally? Obviously, there are some, because this is also why companies start signing these green loans. So first of all, internally, it helps us to push our topics and our targets, or even the topic and issue of sustainability itself, because currently sustainability targets are rarely linked to financial incentives and therefore are at risk of being displaced by financial profit or growth goals, meaning that other projects might be realized instead of striving for the sustainability project because it's easier and there's a financial benefit behind it. And furthermore, it's really an important lever for us to tell everybody, okay, listen, we have this green loan signed. We really want to achieve our targets. Get up your, you know what I mean, and start working and push it and strive for it. And we also have an external effect, or we have more than one external effect. So first of all, by signing this commitment last year, we kind of took on a pioneering role here, being one of the first companies doing so, or at least to be able to put a sign out there to really raise awareness among our suppliers, but also other stakeholders like other companies or customers or peers or even the industry. So it's a really clear sign. Listen, we're trying to create transparency. We really set ourselves ambitious targets. And not only that, we also link these targets to financial benefits. Or financial risks, if you want to say so. And obviously, it's a strong signal to the financial institutes as well. What else? Yeah, just a short summary somehow. The why, so why to do so as a company, it's quite easy. We can cut it down in 2 sentences. First of all, external funding helps us to push our internal targets. It's really like a huge lever. And on the other side, internal commitment can then be rewarded with financial incentives, which also helps us to push the topic or the targets of sustainability or sustainability related targets. Good. And then, yeah, what else? Then in the end, we link finance to sustainability, and then we all together have to work to achieve these targets and give our best and be able to achieve our annual achievement target path. Yeah, And I'm also at the end, because that everything sounds great and everything sounds perfect. And I think it's quite clear and you can follow. Hopefully you were able to follow my presentation, but I have to have a last word here because everything sounds nice, but then in the end, reality kicks in and you never know what's happened. That's it.
Thank you very much, Sabina. Thank you for sharing this quite insightful information from the company. Thank you for sharing the context in which everything was going on and implementing and drawing these lessons learned for other companies. And I think it's really truly pioneering experience you went through. And going back to this lots of emails and talking, can we ask you, was it very difficult to convince these three handsome CEOs to go for this green loan?
I was so laughing when I said that because it's recorded on YouTube. So I was like, these handsome three men. Okay, great. To be honest, I wasn't part of it because I started with GREINER right before they signed the green loan. But I think, to be honest, not so. Yeah, I think it wasn't difficult because I think for them, it's clear that this is an important tool and an important instrument they can use. It's a clear sign to their stakeholders, as I mentioned, externally and internally. So I hope not, and I don't have the perception that it was tough to convince them.
Okay.
And they're quite behind it, yeah. So they really push it.
Nice, good. And the other question, if we may, I see that Bruno Paredes Thormani asked here, what were your criteria when selecting EcoVadis? And maybe if you can shortly describe what EcoVadis rating is, that would also be good.
Okay, I hope I can do so. EcoVadis rating. So EcoVadis is one of the, I would say, one of, or if not the famous rating platform for suppliers. Andreas is shaking his hand, so probably he's not aligned with me here. Yeah, for me, it is like this. It's important for us. So we always used EcoVadis. EcoVadis is an assessment platform. It's where it's a document-based assessment where you have, according to the size of the company, where you're located, but also in which sector or industry sector you're working in, you get a customized questionnaire containing lots of questions covering 4 main areas like environment, social and human, so labor and human rights, procurement and compliance, or business ethics. I think it's called business ethics. And you have to upload documents to prove that your answers of the questionnaire are true and correct. And according to these assessment and the questionnaires and obviously your answers, you get a rating from 0 to 100 points. And this means then also you have a different status. So from platinum status, gold, silver, to bronze status. And this gives some insights on how you as a company are performing in terms of your CSR or sustainability management. Furthermore, so you can assess yourself, but you can also use it as the supplier platform where you have all your suppliers in there. You can evaluate their risks, also related to the country where they're operating or where they're located or the industry they're working in, but also according to their ESG assessment from EcoVadis. So it helps you to really work on your supply chain. And why we choose that? Yeah, because it's familiar. We always used to work with that. It's one of the international well-known platform. I know that there are more out there, but you have to choose one. You don't want to work with 10 different platforms, and you also want to decrease, to be honest, the burden on the supplier side, because if you send them 10,000 questionnaires and use different platforms, they will for sure start doing nothing because it's just too much for them. Yeah. And it always obviously also depends on the size of their supplier.
Thank
so
you.
That was
Thank
a long
you very
answer.
much.
I'm sorry for that, but I hope.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sabina. Thank you very much for your presentation and for answering this question. And I remind everyone to write the questions in the chat. We will not now ask participants to jump in with the questions, but we will bring everyone later the questions which we sign for us, and later we will bring you into the discussion. For now, only the chat, and yeah, later we will bring you in. Thank you, Sabina. And let me introduce our second speaker, Andreas Bocker. Andreas, please correct me if I mispronounce your surname. Okay. Andreas has a background in law and in supply chain management. He works for Group General Counsel ESG Sustainable Strategy Lead at Schoeller-Bleckmann. And today, Andreas will talk about circular economy and innovation for responsible supply chains, mainly concentrating on three aspects. How can responsible sourcing consider circular economy? How to consider the greenhouse gas protocol and the ESG framework? What measures affect the whole product life cycle? Hello, Andreas.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. You're going to share the presentation, right? Perfect.
Yes, yes. Was the surname correct? Do I pronounce it well?
Böttcher.
Thank
so
you.
great. Yeah. Let me start with one comment. I'm with Sabine. ESG-linked financing is the future, and I think everybody has to prepare his or her, so to say, ESG KPIs in order to get financing down the road. Yeah, that's definitely clear. And you're a front runner here. Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm also impressed, to be honest, by the international audience. Having people from South Africa, Ghana, and the Netherlands on the same call is a positive sign and a positive surprise. The topic I'm going to present today is circular economy in the context of specialty steel supplies. And when you want to jump to the first slide, the next slide, so to say, I want to also start with an overview, and this overview is actually very important to understand our environment a little bit. On this slide here, you see our group structure. The structure shall show the internationality of our group and also indicate our global supply chains. In fact, it's a daily business that, for example, the Austrian plant you see on the left-hand side here is semi-manufacturing steels that are finished in the Vietnamese plant. You also see on the left-hand side here, then sent to a customer in Shanghai in China, and then redistributed to Africa. Yeah, and we can see that every day in daily operations that customers are shifting around, so to say, the different products. That is not a specialty here. This makes the recycling pretty complex because products could be basically located all over the globe, apart from Russia nowadays, of course. On the other hand, delivery of the product waste could potentially be made to any of our entities within our group. And you see the numbers of flags here and also the different flags. So that could be many locations. It's a matter of fact that there are already existing transport routes to basically all locations shown at least within the left division, within the advanced manufacturing and services division, which transport routes could better utilized by adding product waste to the already existing shipments. By the way, the rectangle on the right-hand side is not a mistake on this slide. It simply shows the transaction we did already publish a couple of weeks ago, but which is currently in the closure process. When we go to the next page, in order to understand our thinking, you see on this page our publicly announced Strategy 2030. The Strategy 2030 contains three ambitious core topics, I would call it. First, a clear commitment to stay within the oil and gas space. You should know that our products, or most of our products today, are used for the oil and gas space. The second core topic is the building of a new business segment in the energy transition or green tech area, with the very aggressive goal to generate 50% of group sales from the year 2030 out of this new business segment. And here we have to link to the presentation before, because also here we are thinking about ESG-linked financing, be it a debt financing or be it a capital increase. This is still an open point. However, coming back to my presentation, we focus today on the third core topic, which is ensuring sustainability. This core topic includes a general commitment to reduce GHG or greenhouse gas emissions, and it contains a strategy and roadmap for the upcoming years. What I should add here, some of our customers have publicly outlined in their sustainability reports a GHG reduction targets when we think about scope 3 of 30% until the year 2030. And you should know one thing, the particular customer I have in mind here shows a scope 3 emission share, so to say, from their overall emissions of 95%. So they have to do something here. And that's why we also get a lot of pressure nowadays to achieve these GHG reduction goals. When we go to the next page, there are two frameworks I have to dig into when it comes to circular economy. When assessing, pardon me, there was a comment here, not in Russia anymore. You're right. It's not Russia anymore. When we assessing GHG projects, many companies still ignore the financial factor, the cost factor, so to say, coming along with circular economy. And it might be surprising to you, but many companies are running optimization programs nowadays without assessing their financial impacts from applying these programs. We, on the other hand, we follow the philosophy that ecological and economical impacts have to be in line, well knowing that economic benefits could be lagging behind. That's, so to say, a little bit also the requirement for my presentation here. The first framework I would like to highlight is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, or to be very specific, the European Sustainability Reporting Standards. They are important to understand the potential of circular economy projects. Why? Only if I can publicly compensate the efforts caused by circular economy, it makes sense for a business to pursue them. In standard E5, which is a draft at the moment, circular economy is pretty broadly defined. Circular economy is an economic system that uses a systemic approach to maintain a circular flow of resources by regenerating, retaining, or adding to their value while contributing to the sustainable development. The three principles you see on the right-hand side applicable are minimizing waste and pollution, maintaining the value of products, materials, and other resources at the highest value, and the third one, enhancing the efficient use in production and consumption. So on the one hand side, the circular economy project has to have a positive environmental impact. On the other hand side, the standard does not tolerate quality concessions on the product or the material. In case these criteria are met, we can publish the project as a, sorry, please go back to the former slide. In case these criteria are met, we can publish the project as circular economy. We should not forget, though, that also potential financial effects of material risks and opportunities arising from circular economy related impacts have to be disclosed. So in the end, there will always be a judgment by investors and financiers whether a project is justified or not. So that's a little bit a bypass I want to show here. When we go to the next page, the second framework I would like to highlight is the GHG protocol. For the purposes of this presentation, it's not particularly relevant whether we use the GHG protocol or any other GHG standard. The only relevant question is, does the circular economy project make sense from a GHG standpoint? Let me explain. Every step along the supply chain causes emissions from sourcing, production to the usage of the product and its final disposal. Surely the weights are different depending on the material. For example, plastics cause significant pollution during end-of-life treatment, which steel does not actually. The important message is there are a lot of potentials to bring down emissions, but the primary hypothesis is that closing the loop will instantly add GHG emissions and not bring GHG emissions down. At least from the logistics that are needed, we will have something or a positive factor in the sense that we have to add a certain amount here. So what would be drivers for an ecologically beneficial circular economy project? First, if I do not have to dispose the material but can reuse, I will most probably have a benefit also in financial terms. Second, if I can raise a product quality by adding scrap, I would not do so instead of adding third-party raw material and thus fulfill the requirement of adding value. And third, if by doing so, I can choose a more GHG efficient or production related process, I would also generate benefits. And when we go to the next slide, in steel supplies, we should keep in mind the specialty that the emission factor of recycled steel waste is 0. So steel itself does not generate any kind of emissions. Let us look at our product cycle here. In a simplified description, the products we are looking at in our project are 2 types. Non-magnetic stainless steel collars and finished measurement and logging by drilling tools, both of which are used for complex directional drilling applications in oil and gas and geothermal drilling. They're the housing, if you want to say so, for electronics used to measure azimuth of the drill string and geophysical parameters around the drill string, so to say. The product is sourced on the next slide from the steel mill, finished in our facilities, shipped to the production center, for example, in Houston, Texas, and then distributed to one of the 120 countries operating these tools today. As noted before, one of the complexities for our project, namely products are basically spread all over the globe, where they would have to be collected each separately and on a piece-by-piece basis, basically, that is something we have to consider here. The transport of 10-meter-long steel collars is not particularly efficient, given their shape and also given their waste. So considering all these factors, the question is there a GHG potential? In particular, when we consider that in many cases, final product waste is already scrapped at the end of its life today, because these are valuable products. So these are valuable steel collars, so to say. And although it's not technically speaking a closed loop, what could be a potential we could raise, so to say, if we add another or take one layer out and close the loop in an inner sense. When we go to the next page, and then another one actually, here we have to look into the details. The steel we are manufacturing is not produced in a blast furnace, in a so-called Hochofen, but in an electric arc furnace. The electric arc furnace is a scrap oven, so by technology, it requires a pretty high percentage of scrap, and it is run by electricity rather than gas or coal, which is already pretty efficient. The important factor is the higher the amount of high alloyed scrap, the less alloying surcharges need to be added to reach material quality requirements. Also, energy-intense remelting processes can be saved, thereby keeping GHG emissions low. So the oven is a very crucial part in a steel-based circular economy project. The question is, can overall emissions be saved when we close the loop? We should consider that some electric arc furnaces are run on zero emission electricity, because electricity is, for example, acquired from hydropower or any other type of renewable energy today, and can therefore be run actually very, very efficiently. I would even say at an efficiency level that is probably in scope 2 calculations 0. The answer is it very much depends on sourcing and the underlying GHG model. If the GHG model assumes that metal scrap is in any case 0 emission, even if the material has been sourced third party and from a much less efficient cycle, it will most probably not make sense to close the loop where we have to take into account GHG emissions in addition. However, if the model requires a solid proof of the scrap's efficiency, it will make sense to throw in what has been taken out at the beginning of the cycle. And there are additional issues we have to consider when we go to the next page. First, the global collection of the scrap causes financial efforts and emissions. Second, somebody needs to organize shipping and make sure the scrap sent back to the steel mill meets quality requirements of the steel mill. We have some noise on this call, sorry for that. Third, the products need to be dismantled and sorted by grade. And fourth, somebody needs to pay for all that. And this is what we should not forget at any point. So the question remains, what is the GHG potential? And equally important, what is the GHG value that can be compensated on the profit and loss statement? So let us summarize. Closing the loop definitely makes sense, but there's no general approach whether closed loops need to be seen in a narrow or a wider scale. So whether loops can be closed in an overlap of 2 or more layers, or whether it needs to be a perfect loop of products going out and coming in on the same route. In the former case, we probably are already where we want to be. So basically in the case which is already existing for many, many years, where basically the scrap company is selling the material and then bringing it back to the steel mill, is probably already close to the most efficient we can reach. Circular economy leaves a technical and a business question. On the one hand side, the question is whether there are technologies in the loop that can raise efficiencies, also from a GHG perspective. And on the other hand side, the question is whether somebody is willing to pay for that, or in an ideal case, whether cost savings can be achieved that can be depicted in pricing. And when we talk about cost savings, CO2 certification requirement, a CO2 tax, or KPI-dependent interest rates, so KPI-dependent financing, can be cost factors that could, of course, be positive, or will, of course, be positive drivers for a circular economy project. And to be very honest, although the regulator is pointing into this direction, we do not have evidence yet this value will be coming in the upcoming future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Thank you for sharing this experience and drawing the lessons for other companies. Can we ask Andreas, actually, in a nutshell, what are the similarities and differences of circular economy and responsible sourcing?
I have to answer that question broader, to be honest. Circular economy, I believe, has only a limited overlap with responsible sourcing from a scientific standpoint, to be honest. Because and I can only answer that for our field, actually. I can only answer it for the metal field. In the metal field, you have some technical requirements that, and I talked about the oven before, that do already require circular economy, because you cannot even run these ovens, yeah, without, so to say, taking material, without taking scrap that has already been in a certain cycle, in a certain loop, so to say. Responsible sourcing, in my sense, has some other criteria. Responsible sourcing is not only a question of the E side, so to say, of the environmental side. It's in particular also a question of the social side. And the social question and the circular economy question, in my sense, or in our industry, has only a very limited overlap. So I would actually see it as two topics that have only a limited amount of overlap.
Thank you very much, Andreas. And one more question, if we can, were you able to monetize the benefits and perhaps utilize financial instruments as GREINER did?
Absolutely. The benefits, the green benefits, are a question, because, as I said before, we do already run closed loops, but in this case, the closed loop is not controlled by us. That's the difference. The closed loop, so to say, is happening internationally, because, as I said before, we are talking about high quality steel here, high quality alloys here. All companies, from a pure financial standpoint, have an interest to sell it to a scrap company, and the scrap company has a financial interest to sell it back to a steel mill, because it's basically a question of generating money. The financial impact is something we have not the full clarity yet, to be honest, because it very much depends on what are the steel prices at the different steps, so to say, of the loop. I give you two examples. If the final user of the product manages to sell the scrap at market value, or even above market value, it will get very tough, so to say, to bringing that into a business model where you have to account in also logistics, where you have to account in potential certification requirements, and. If, on the other hand, the final user disposes the material or sells the material far below the market value, then of course you can very nicely engineer, so to say, on the business model and on the pricing, and then you come to a situation where the closing of the loop, the circular economy, makes 100% sense or even 110% sense from a pure P&L perspective.
Thank you very much, Andreas. And thank you to everyone who's writing the questions in the chat. We will come to all these questions after our last presentation. And our next keynote speaker is Mariana Kovacic-Lukic. She's Research Associate at Institute for Management Sustainability here at VU Vienna. And Mariana is conducting very exciting research and will share some learnings of this on the topic of the business case behind supply chain responsibility. How does it pay off? She will tell us today how does the regulatory landscape looks like in responsible sourcing, giving us this overview. What are the main learnings from 12 corporate case studies, which she went through in these recent months very intensively? And what is the business case and what can you do for success? Hello, Mariana.
Hi everyone. I'm Mariana, and I am apparently allergic to grass. So if you hear any sneezes or coughs in the next 10 minutes, please excuse me. The pollen has been flying a lot recently here in Vienna. As you can see, I will start right away with the regulatory framework. I will just skip over it because you heard a lot about it already. What you can basically see is that companies are faced with a mix of national, international, EU regulations, and a whole lot of standards and certifications they can choose from, basically. All of this highly differs according to the industry the companies work in, the area, meaning the geographic area, and the raw materials they use, with the Critical Raw Materials Act recently going into effect, for example. So how does a company choose which portfolio of standards and certifications they are actually offering themselves to their clients? And what do they expect from their suppliers? The problem here is as well, a lot of certifications are costly, or not free at least, and costly for suppliers. For example, when it comes to raw material suppliers, they're usually small suppliers. They maybe don't have the financial means. Meaning that they are hesitant to go beyond what they actually have to do by law. What we see current business activities, these two are just examples, two specific examples. There's a lot more going on, as you saw just in the last two presentations. The Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, as you probably have heard at some point, gives an orientation for businesses, for their business practices, and for basically how they structure the vision and where the company wants to go. But this is no legislative framework which regulates the actual implementation of these goals. Another thing is a reporting tool by the Global Reporting Initiative, which is basically a stakeholder and materiality analysis, asking the stakeholders of a company what do they feel like is the most important thing, or which are the most important topics for companies which they should prioritize. But since it's stakeholders who are asked, this highly depends on who you're asking. So if you ask your employees, most of them are basically looking at their own well-being, logically, but this also influences the analysis and the actual reporting. So thank you. You heard it mentioned before. And the EU has recently gone through the first step of passing the EU Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. This is the actual name of it. Here you can see a map from the European Coalition for Corporate Justice, which shows you the companies in green, the countries in green, which actually already implemented some kind of law on due diligence for companies, and the red countries, sorry, I'm getting confused with companies and countries, who are discussing these kinds of laws and so on currently. And this EU due diligence directive basically wants to make, or is making, companies accountable for what is happening in their supply chain to some degree. Since it's currently still in a draft, there's a lot of confusion around it. Companies don't know what they have to do, what they must do, what they should do. So we thought, if you could go to the next slide, please. This is the academic part of it. And when I say we, I mean Andre, Professor Martinuzzi, and our working student, Luis. We did a case study, a qualitative case study, analyzing 12 Austrian companies. We had an interview guideline, basically asking questions about what are companies doing in regards to supply chain responsibility, or rather, what are they doing more than they should be doing by law at the moment? What challenges they are facing, and what challenges they overcame during the process, and potential solutions to these challenges, which could help them in the future or which helped them in the past. The companies we interviewed span 6 industries, as you can see on the right side: the electronics, construction, manufacturing industry, chemical, food, and raw materials industry. So what did we actually find out? Thank you. All the companies had initiatives. You could put it down to basically 4 areas. The first one of the biggest ones actually, was partnerships and collaboration. So most of the companies we interviewed either collaborated within their industry, or they collaborated across different sectors, or they collaborated with their suppliers or their customers, just basically with anyone who is a part of their supply chain. This enabled a very profound foundation for trust within the supply chain and an exchange of information. Another thing which some companies did is vertical integration. In the basic sense, there is. This could be by actually buying out the suppliers, or integrating them into the company, or by joint ventures, different types of vertical integration. And this enabled companies to enhance transparency along the whole supply chain and influence their supply chain at origin, so in the beginning of the actual chain. A third thing, what we realized, the third area, was the involvement of customers. So not only involving suppliers, but also involving customers. Customers have needs, customers have demands, so do industries. And if you want to get to the root of what customers actually want, and I mean, for example, specific requirements when it comes to sustainability in a product or sustainability in the supply chain, involve them to know what they actually want. This also raised awareness for responsibility and, for example, sustainability at customer level. The last area which we found was technical innovation. It's a big topic right now: AI, blockchain, whatever you can find circling around the internet. Companies are doing it, or starting to do it at least. This also helps them, as I mentioned before, with the certificates, for example, by underlining blockchain technology to prove the authenticity of actually the certificates that, for example, companies or suppliers are using. And we had a webinar last month about digital product passports. It's also a new thing coming up, and companies are trying to get there. So one of the main problems, thank you. Most of you, I guess, are from the business sector, and you are familiar with this graph. This is a supply chain in its most basic nature, let's say it like that. If you could just skip back one. Thank you. So you have the upstream side and you have the downstream side, basically saying you have an input, you have a company which transforms the input, and you have an output on the downstream side, which is sold to customers, to businesses, to whoever is downstream. From this supply chain, we realize that's too simple. We have to move to a supply network. And now you can move to the next slide. Thank you. You can still see the linear flow of, let's say, products going from upstream to industry, or to company to downstream. But the relations between the steps are way more complicated and way more intertwined than in the basic supply chain. So you can also see that suppliers are collaborating with each other. Suppliers are supplying companies and the competition. And on the other hand, customers are also being supplied by different companies and the industry and the competition. And they themselves are supplying customers. So this whole network obviously raises the complexity in the chain, which is why we call it network now. But we realize when companies adopt this perspective of a network, they are able to move more forward with their initiatives. And if you go to the next one, I will start with our actual findings. So starting with upstream, the upstream level, you can see that when companies focus their initiatives, and when I say initiatives, I mean just things they do on the upstream level. So how they take responsibility. For example, the last two presentations you just saw are two examples of these initiatives. What we found is when companies actually collaborate with their suppliers, when they try to get to know their suppliers, you have better communication, you have better information, and you build trust, as I mentioned before. With the information and the collaboration actually comes a better negotiation power for companies. Not only when it comes to price, this also counts, for example, for what do we do in disruptions? How can we secure supply in disruptions? And lastly, what you can do is improve and develop together in a common direction and actually ensuring innovation, which brings benefit to all stakeholders. So basically saying the business case for a company to move their initiatives and actions upstream is more control, more information, and more influence on the upstream level. And by that, in the end, transparency in the upstream level of the supply network. All these initiatives upstream obviously have an effect on downstream level. Basically saying that when you know your supply network, when you have information about your supply network, you can actually increase resilience of your company and the network itself. This also goes hand in hand with the risk assessment. Companies are assessing more and more risk factors actually, and also counting or taking into account sustainability aspects of, for example, social responsibility in their actual risk assessment. This enables them to move from mitigating risk to actually preventing or being able to prevent risk. As I just mentioned as well, supply capability or delivery capability, basically saying that when you know what's going on upstream, you can give your customers the security that you will be able to deliver in the framework that you actually assessed your risk. There is never a 100% guarantee of doing that, but yeah. And lastly, what makes you attractive for customers in the end, which gives you the ability to actually keep on selling your products, is better products and better quality in the end. Because you have more information, you have partnerships, you have a foundation based on trust and exchange. You can start looking at your own processes, which gives me to the next point. The focus in the company. Yes, thank you. You can actually gain a new perspective on production and business processes in your own company. And by that also seeing new potential for optimization and of existing processes and actually relationships. So if you try to look at your, let's say, supplier levels, your supplier contracts, you can also see who is maybe bringing you the most benefit of it. And this also goes, if you actually manage to transform your company to an efficient and more effective company, you gain autonomy and the ability to act, especially in times of disruptions or a very dynamic regulatory framework, which we've heard about the past hour it's been already. And in the end, what you actually gain, not only for yourself or for the company and also the industry, is actually a positive image, because sustainability and social responsibility is becoming more and more important, and people are raising awareness in that topic, so you actually manage to do that. These are 10 recommendations, basically. I'm calling them lightly recommendations. I'm not going to go over all of them. The slides will be available on the website in the end, but I'm just going to focus on 2 or 3, which I find for myself are the most important. It's basically the network perspective. You are not you are not only a link in a chain, you are part of a whole network and a whole system, acting in a specific market or even more markets with different stakeholders. This also means you should focus on partnerships and what is actually going on in that system, because the new regulations do require a specific degree of transparency in the supply network. But how can you know what is going on when you don't know your network? And when you know your network, you can actually act outside your industry and outside your network to see, okay, I'm acting in the chemical industry. What is the raw materials industry doing? Maybe you can adapt it to your own industry or your own company in the first stage. And then the most important thing, at least for me, which all of the companies showed, was a thinking in longer terms, longer time frames, and acting proactively, seeing, okay, these are the regulations which are coming up now, but what can come next, for example. Yes, that's the case. That's the business case. That's the study. Since I still am a member of the resourcing project, here is again a slide just to show you what we are doing actually and what we have been doing. And yes, the most important thing, since this has been our last webinar in our series, we would love to welcome you at the closing conference on our beautiful campus in Vienna. It should not be as hot as it is today, or has it been the past days in September, I hope at least, but you can find all of the information on our project website. And we would love to welcome you here, as I said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariana, for wonderful presentation. And I think, as Andrea wrote in the chat, we are very lucky to be the first one to see the outcomes of the study. Everybody else will be able to do it only in autumn when the results will be published. So thank you very much, Mariana, for this first-hand experience and first outcomes of the study.
Thank you.
May I ask you, Mariana, do you think this valid only for large companies, also for small and medium enterprises?
We've seen in our cases, at least, it ranges from small, medium to large. So all of them can do something, at least, in their frame of capabilities. And the business case counts for all of them. So it's not saying, okay, but keep the focus downstream just for the large companies. No, definitely not. All of them were able to do at least one thing, not even more. And it's not about for example, the monetary aspects, because that's a big part, obviously, but you can still do a lot of things with the capabilities you have. So no, it's not focused on large companies.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mariana. And I think we now can move to our discussion. I would like to invite our speakers, Andreas and Sabina, to join us. And also, Andre, if you could join us for the panel discussion, that would be great. Thank you very much. And I think we have a lot of wonderful questions, and we will now invite some of our participants to talk with us about them. Michael Yub, I see that you have a lot of nice comments and questions to us. If you would like to switch on your camera and unmute yourself, we would be very happy to welcome you in this panel with your question. Michael, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm just opening my laptop to unlock the camera.
Okay, if it's too complicated, you also can just address a question. That is also fine.
No, it's fine. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So yeah, I think my question I was putting out there was during the presentation of Andreas, and I was wondering, because I myself doing some research on sustainability, especially focusing on the use phase of the products. And you were talking a lot about the sustainability during the manufacturing of your products. And I was wondering how much you take into account the use phase, because as I understood correctly, you are producing materials for or tools for the oil rigs or oil company, which is not especially sustainable, or is like one of the problems we're facing. So how much do you take this into account?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you very much. As you can see my face, we are taking it a lot into account, and actually in three directions. First of all, we are thinking about how we should charge, and I'm not necessarily talking about financials here. Yeah, how we should charge the usage of our components As I said correctly, most of it is going into oil and gas, a small amount into geothermal drilling, which is from the technique basically the same, but the application is a different one. Whether we have to charge or not is a question of the model, because depending on which model you're reading, some models would say as soon as, so to say, operations are out of your control, you don't have to account for that. Yeah, and some other models would be saying, well, you have to account anyhow. Although the question is how you can account for a tool which you have basically sold to somebody else, in which in a non-circular world, so to say, you're never going to see again. Yeah, so that's on the practical side, and I think the room, to say it positively, the room for discretion how you account for that is a pretty broad one. The second point is it also depends on what would be the emissions caused by your material. Yeah, and here it depends on ours. It depends on which type of material. I mean, we have tools which are basically run down the wellbore, run down the field, so to say, with water fluid. Yeah, so basically they are not causing or using any kind of energy for that. So in that sense, it would be definitely be zero. And then of course we also have tools like drilling motors, which are not running on gas or oil or diesel or so. They're simply run on drilling fluid and water basically. But here, of course, at some point you have to put energy in, and obviously a motor by definition is transforming a certain amount of energy into speed, basically into speed and turnover. So in that regard, you have to basically account for that. Yeah. And the third question is, of course, how you would handle or how you would charge the scrapping of the components. And that is something that's probably not so important for us, because first of all, the scrapping of the steel doesn't cause any emissions. So that's zero. That's a good thing here, not like with plastics where you have emissions. And we also have to consider that there is already a loop existing, which I said before. So it's a question of basically optimization here. What we are also, and that's an additional point here, what we are also thinking about is how should we treat the business model? Like, it's a difference whether you have a sales model or a lease model, a rental model. Yeah. When you think about a rental model as a product, as a service, you have to account for that in another direction. But that's, of course, a third layer, so to say, we have to consider. And we believe that one or the other product sale could be offered as a product, as a service in the future for actually environmental purposes, because here we have the control, and here we can also accurately then charge and optimize.
Okay, so as I understand correctly, you are kind of disconnecting from what is done with the tool or by the tool.
Yeah, not necessarily, but in many cases, it's as of today, it's a matter of fact, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael, very much for
Thanks for having me.
joining us. Thank you for the question. And Russell, if you would like to also join us with your question. Hello, Russell.
Hello. So, there is some issues with maybe light. I'm so sorry for that. Okay, I think it's fine. So I had a question. So regarding this one, that we are working on GREINER project. So the youth-funded projects at Technovative Solutions. We are working with circular economy, material passport, and it's like all on one. So here there is one use case is automotive industry literally. So automotive use case basically. So do you know how we can implement the circular economies principles to reduce the waste and promote resource efficiency in the manufacturing process?
I don't know if it's a question to my person. I mean, I cannot speak for the automotive industry. I can speak for other industries. What I can tell in construction, for example, construction or housing, there's a lot of potential for circular economy simply by the fact that you reuse material and reuse material and transform it into different kind of material. Yeah. So the working with different materials, the putting together of materials. You can also, I mean, composite would be one example. Yeah. Has a lot of potential, but I cannot speak for the automotive industry.
So in addition, my question is that, is there any traceability for the data? Is like the flow is going for the circular economy, it's like for the building projects, you can say that. Is there any, how, like, is there anything that we are tracing the data on every steps for calculating the circular economy?
I mean, I'm not aware, and I'm thinking more about other industries here than my industry. I am not aware that there's a general metric out, to be honest. I know about some projects who did calculations on, for example, when you reused cement, or when you reused the pavement of streets or so, yeah, and you cut it, then clean it to some respect and reuse it. There is some case-specific metrics, but I'm not aware of about any general metric, to be honest.
Maybe I can help you, Andreas, here. First, you're the poor guy trying to answer all the questions here. I mean, if there would be a metric, and I'm also not aware of one, yeah, but I would strive for a product carbon footprint, yeah. But if you do so with comparing product carbon footprint, depending obviously on what you're producing or what's your product or service, then you can really validate and show and create transparency what's better or not, yeah. But this is going to be very complex, and yeah. But a general metric or KPI defining circularity itself, no, I would rather stick to a life cycle assessment or product carbon footprint if it comes to products or services.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Russell, for wonderful questions. And I would like to bring in Volker Krumpel to us.
Yeah, hello. I'm not sure if you can see me and hear me.
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
So I have a question in terms of, I mean, we learned a lot about the good reasons why collaboration along supply chains can make sense, and what are the positive effects it can have. And I'm also involved in supply chain collaboration projects and activities, but we also realize that there's a lot of reluctance to do that, knowing all these good points and reasons. But I would like to know what your individual experiences are in terms of research, but also in your businesses. What do you see are the key things that are hindering sustainability collaboration approaches in companies, in supply chains, especially when it's going beyond multiple tiers? So not only asking your direct supplier for providing more information and becoming more sustainable, but just collaborating really along complex supply chains. What is the key factors that are hindering people, or why they are reluctant?
Thank you. Andre, would you say something about collaborations?
Well, I think first of all, we see that supply chains are not chains, but quite complex and dynamic networks. So it would be easy if it was a chain and you can go along the chain is stable and it's linear and everything's nice. It's highly dynamic and it's highly linked. So it's complexity. That's one of the biggest challenge. Second, there is there's intellectual property, patent. It's our knowledge. We might lose competitiveness when everybody knows what we do here. So the question is, goddamn, what you do here? Is it just smelting something, or is it really rocket science, or what's the key knowledge you like to protect? In some cases, perfectly understandable. In some cases, just a kind of prejudice. Third, I would say there are missing benefits, missing incentives. So the incentive to say, and I think it will be different now with the supply chain regulation that comes from the European Union, and this might change the game quite intensively. I'm quite reluctant to say it will be the consumer, and it will be based on passports. I think the European Commission at the moment bets a lot on passports and imagines that then the consumer going to the supermarket, no, the supermarket is easy. Buying a new smartphone, a new computer, will then read 2,000 pages of passports of different, what's in the battery, what's in the chip, what's in it. Nobody will do that. So the main question will then be how to aggregate this knowledge, all these different KPIs, all these different dimensions into a system which is understandable and relevant for consumers. So then the weighting problem comes in, difficult. Summarizing it, in short, I think we are living in systems. The systems are not aware of that they are systems. The companies are not aware of that they're part of systems, and they're not really capable of designing these systems. At the same time, I talked to many CEOs, and they would like to be more than just in a straitjacket of regulation and competitors. They've gone through this biography to design, not to manage, to create, to lead, to do something, and they're in straitjacket of KPIs and quarterly reports. And when you tell them, when you co-design your whole system, you might be a rule maker and not a rule taker, then their eyes brighten up and they say, tell me how to do that. And then the very sad answer is, yes, that's an academic challenge. We don't know how to do it as well. It's not so easy to make systems self-aware and able to co-design themselves. But I think that's the future.
Thank you. And since we mentioned collaborations, if participants are interested in future projects and future collaborations, please contact us via LinkedIn, or also we can add our contacts here in the chat. We would be very interested to discuss future possibilities. And meanwhile, Valeria, I know that you had a nice question to Sabina. If you can...
Yeah, can you see me and hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, cannot see yet, but we'll try to fix this.
Okay, but
Dorothy, you were there. Yeah, now we can see you.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, now
At
yes.
least I can see you.
Yes, now you're here. Hello, Valeria.
Hi, Sabina. I just wanted to ask you, I found your presentation very interesting. If you have established some criteria for selecting which projects will be funded from this loan, especially, I guess, amongst the other areas, for example, when it comes to women in leadership or green energy.
Again, you mean what we finance with the green loan itself, or what we do in regards to achieve the targets?
How do you prioritize which projects you fund with that loan?
Well, the loan itself, it goes to each and every project, not product there. So there's not a clear project behind it, which we fund with that. But in terms of the criteria, so these 3 targets, we focus on all of them. So there's no preferences.
And if you come to, let's say, a priority choice, you have to pick one amongst many. Do you have some criteria, or you have enough to fund all the projects you have?
No, we really working on all of them. We always try to have a comprehensive approach, trying to cover all these 3 areas like E, S, and G. Yeah.
Okay.
So I
wouldn't
be aware of that there is a certain area where we put more effort in.
Okay.
Thank you, Valeria. Thank you, Sabina. And actually, we have 3 minutes left till our meeting is over. So I would like to give opportunity for each of the speaker, give 1 minute to summarize most important learnings of today.
And start with Andreas. He has to.
Andreas, please, go on.
Yeah.
I see your message that you have to leave straight on time.
Sorry for that. Thank you very much. I don't want to make a summary. I actually want to invite everybody here. Be proud and simply try to find projects. I'm sure there are many projects that make sense from an ecological but also social perspective. We did discuss the social perspective here. Just try it and you will see surprisingly nice number of projects that would be available.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you. Sabina, would you like to summarize main learnings of today?
Summarize main learnings. There are so many learnings all the time. I mean, I think the main learning is get going. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, there's no way out. With their business as usual is over. We need to become more sustainable. There are lots of challenges out there which we have to tackle. Just don't lean back and do whatever you can.
Very wise, inspiring words, Sabina. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Mariana?
Yeah, I can only agree, because I was just thinking, and I was also thinking that doing one thing is better than doing nothing. So just do it, as wisely said by Nike. And I think, as mentioned before, it really does not matter on the company size, on the industry or whatever. Everyone has the capability to do something, at least the small, like, doesn't matter how big it is. So I can only agree with, go ahead.
Thank you, Mariana. Andre?
Well, that's not from today, but it fits to the broad picture. I'm dealing with sustainability management now really for 25 years. And out of these 25 years, 23 years, I heard sustainability is something for the niche, is something for the very innovative one. But you know, we're market leaders, we can't do that. And for the last 3 years, I hear more and more companies saying, we are the market leaders, we have to move, otherwise nobody moves. If we move the whole sector, we move the whole market. And that's new, and it's really cool.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the speakers and participants. We would like actually to continue open discussion. If you would like to, we will not close the meeting immediately, but we will stop the recording now. So I greet everyone. And if somebody would like to stay here a bit longer to join us for discussion out of recording, you are more than welcome. I know that Andreas has to go. If other speakers can stay.